Hotep, how's everybody doing today? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Sunday, February 20th, 2022. And I wanted to come on for a few minutes just to give a brief overview of a 10-week online class that I teach on Sundays called From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay. So share this broadcast on social media platforms. I teach this class on Sundays, usually about 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can join us in class today, actually. You can join us in class today. We're going to start as soon as I get finished with this broadcast here. And we deal with, I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, and we deal with history that leads up to the Civil War taking place. And then we deal with the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. We deal with Reconstruction. We deal with Special Field Order number 15, 40 Acres and a Mule. We go through and break down all this history, and we deal with what happens after slavery ends as well. Okay, the Reconstruction Era, 1861, 1865. Reconstruction Era, 1865, 1877. Jim Crow Era, Great Migration, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement. So we're going to post the link here. You can register for this online class. And class is on sale, $80, regularly $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So we start in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase. And the Louisiana Purchase is related to the Haitian Revolution. It's connected to the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1804. And the Louisiana Purchase doubles the territory that of the U.S. Okay, and the U.S. gets 828,000 square miles of land for less than 3 cents an acre. They buy the land from France, and the French are getting their behinds kicked by the Haitians. And one of the reasons why they sell the land here is because they're trying to raise money. The French are trying to raise money to continue fighting against the Haitians. They almost go bankrupt. So this doubles the territory of the U.S., but it also increases the demand for enslaved African labor as well. So the Louisiana Purchase of 1803 brought into the United States 828,000 square miles of land, territory from France, that France just stole from Native Americans and African people who were already here. What was known at the time as the Louisiana Territory stretched from the Mississippi River in the east to the Rocky Mountains in the west, and from the Gulf of Mexico in the south to the Canadian border in the north. Part or all of 15 states were eventually created from the land deal, which is considered one of the most important achievements of Thomas Jefferson's presidency. And History.com, official website of the History Channel, has some good information on the Louisiana Purchase. And what we're going to see is we deal with the Mexican-American War, 1846, 1848, Missouri Compromise, 1820. Now, the Missouri Compromise of 1820 is designed to organize the land that the U.S. gets because of the Louisiana Purchase, okay? And we see a map here, and we see the territory for the Louisiana Purchase. And we're going to see what leads to the Civil War taking place. We see the Mexican-American War, 1846, 1848, and the Missouri Compromise of 1850, which is going to organize the land that the U.S. gets from the Mexico because of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848. The U.S. gets the territory that makes up California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. And they're determining which states are going to be free states, which states are going to continue to have slavery. And the Compromise of 1850 consisted of 5 bills. One of them was the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which intensified the abolitionist movement. and it causes more runaway slaves to run into Canada, go from the north into Canada. We look at the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, because the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 is going to Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 is something else that leads to the Civil War taking place. And what this does is this leaves it up to what's known as popular sovereignty. It leaves it up to the people moving into the Kansas-Nebraska territory. It leaves it up to them to determine whether or not they're going to have slavery, as opposed to it being dictated by the federal government. And this infuriates abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, things like this. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Kansas-Nebraska Act is going to repeal the Missouri Compromise of 1820. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, what this does is this allows Maine to come into the state, come into the Union as a free state, which means slavery is abolished, and it allows Missouri to come into the Union as a slaveholding state. Okay, this is the Missouri Compromise of 1820. But what it does is the remaining territory, that territory from the Louisiana Purchase, the remaining territory, the U.S., the federal government said that slavery is abolished in the rest of that territory. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 is going to repeal the Missouri Compromise of 1820, and is also, once again, organizing that land that the U.S. got from the Louisiana Purchase. So passed over fierce opposition in Kansas and signed into law in 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act created the territories of Kansas and Nebraska and gave each the right to decide whether or not to permit slavery when it joined the Union. Frederick Douglass believed that popular sovereignty, this is Stephen Douglas, believed that popular sovereignty, as the ideal was known, would resolve the ongoing sectional debate between North and South over slavery's extension into the territories. Now, and then bleeding Kansas is going to be armed conflict in the Kansas territory. And this is going to be armed conflict from about 1855 to 1859 between pro-slavery and anti-slavery groups, what's known as bleeding Kansas, as a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. But something else is going to take place that's going to change the trajectory of this country. As a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, the Republican Party is going to be founded in 1854 as a backlash to the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And the Republican Party is formed by groups of abolitionists. Then we know 6 years later, November 6, 1860, the Republican candidate for president is going to become president-elect. That's Abraham Lincoln. And 6 weeks after Lincoln becomes president-elect, South Carolina on December 20th, 1860, secedes from the Union and becomes the first state to secede from the Union. And we're going to see this leads to the Civil War taking place the following year in 1861. Okay, so each class we go through and analyze approximately a 10, 15, 20-year period of history. We look at this history chronologically. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips to look at this history from about 1803 through the Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow era, World War I, World War II, Great Migration, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power movement, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended. What were the laws and policies put in place? How did we get to where we are today? And understand where we need to go from here. And when we look in the 1880s, 1890s, and we look at the attacks on African-American rights, the attack on our voting rights in the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s, it's what's taking place right now with Republicans pushing voter suppression bills in state legislatures. In 19 states have passed about 34 voter suppression bills. This is the same thing that happened in the 1880s and 1890s. It's a repeat of that history. Okay, so we look at things like manifest destiny as well. which is the ideology that's also going to lead to the Mexican-American War taking place. Mexican-American War, 1846, 1848. When we look at the U.S. Civil War, and I think I have it in here. The Civil War in the United States began in 1861, starts April 12, 1861, with the attack on Fort Sumter in South Carolina. After decades of simmering tensions between northern and southern states over slavery, states' rights, and westward expansion, okay? Decades of simmering tensions between northern and southern states over slavery, states' rights, and westward expansion. And we're going to see with the Mexican-American War of 1846, 1848, we're going to see what happens after that, okay? And the intensification of the abolitionist movement as well. And also, Texas is going to come into the Union in 1845 as a slaveholding state. We know Texas wins their independence from Mexico in 1836. Mexico wins their independence from Spain, 1821. We see that Mexico abolishes slavery, 1829, under Vicente Guerrero, who was of African descent, who's the president of Mexico, who's of African descent. He abolishes slavery, okay? So we go through and look at this history chronologically. The election of Abraham Lincoln, and we know that the History Channel is airing the series on Lincoln this weekend, starting this weekend. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 caused 7 southern states to secede from the Union and form the Confederate States of America, the Confederate States of America. 4 more states joined them. The war between the states, as the Civil War was also known, ended in Confederate surrender in 1865. The conflict was the costliest and deadliest war ever fought on American soil, with some 620,000 of 2.4 million soldiers killed, millions more injured, and much of the South left in ruin. All right. Okay, so this is, for those just joining us, I'm just doing a brief overview of this 10-week online class that I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We deal with, we start with the Louisiana Purchase of 1803 and the Haitian Revolution. And we deal with this history chronologically to see what happened, what caused the Civil War to take place, what happened after slavery ended, the reversal of our, why Reconstruction ended, 1877, the reversal of our rights after that, the attack on our voting rights, the attack on our land, all this, okay, to understand what happened to us throughout history, to see how we got to where we are today, understand where we need to go from here, what needs to take place. So this is a 10-week online class that I teach. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. We just posted a link here. You can register for the class. I teach this on Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to have class today. And we do the sessions live, so you can go back and watch them anytime also. So a year from now, if you want to go back and watch the entire class, you can do that. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Just scroll down the page and you can register for it. We teach the classes 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The classes on sale $80, regularly $130. Okay. And then on Saturdays, I teach from the ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they teach you in school. That's another 10-week online class I teach. We have a bundle pack. You can register for both classes for only $120, regularly $130 each. Now, if you have taken any of my online classes before, you can email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. You'll get a 50% discount on the new classes, okay, in the bundle pack. Email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com and you'll get 50% off. All right, let's continue for a few more minutes here. So and I'm going to post this here. Also, yeah, email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, let's continue. How's everybody doing? Give us a thumbs up or a heart if you like this broadcast. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. And when we see the attacks on voting rights, especially African American voting rights right now, we look at the attack, the false attack with critical race theory, and these laws being passed so far in 14 states. 14 states have passed laws dealing with suppressing what can be taught in school. This article here from Time Magazine from January 12, 2022. A new report finds that states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. They're talking about Reconstruction. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. And there were a lot of gains that African Americans were making. Okay, but this is going to get reversed with the compromise of 1877 and Reconstruction ending. In the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago at the U.S. Capitol, January 6, 2021, the aftermath of the insurrection, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence and the Reconstruction era. The period of political revolution directly following the American Civil War. The quote, the events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction. The events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials, which is one of the reasons why the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 was passed by Congress, because you had attacks on African-American elected officials and white Republicans as well, who were in the South. You had attacks on them. So and we did with the Ku Klux Klan Act in our class also. That was one of the 4 Force Acts, FORCE, one of the 4 Force Acts passed during the Reconstruction era. Now, this is Eric Foner, Pulitzer Prize winning historian and author of Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. He said this in an interview with the New Yorker magazine published a week after the January 6th insurrection. That was instigated and incited heavily by the traitor-in-chief Benedict Donald. Now, scholars say studying the aftermath of the Civil War can help put in context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent years, from the brutal murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers, especially Derek Chauvin, in 2020, to the voter suppression laws enacted after African-American voters played a big role helping Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris become elected president and vice president in 2020. This huge backlash against that, especially in Georgia, after Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff won the Senate races, defeating the 2 Republicans, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. And if you know anything about the statewide election laws in Georgia, the reason why you have statewide election laws in Georgia, so if for like Secretary of State, U.S. Senator, these statewide election laws, in the primary, if one candidate does not get more than 50% of the vote, then there has to be a runoff election between the 2 top vote getters. So you should ask yourself the question, well, wait a second. If I win, like Reverend Raphael Warnock won the primary and beat Kelly Loeffler, okay, but he didn't get more than 50% of the vote. So why should he have to run again in the general election against somebody he beat in the primary election. Well, the reason why that law exists, it was specifically designed to keep African Americans from having statewide power in the state of Georgia. Okay, and this goes back to a man named Denmark Groover in Georgia in 1963. He was a segregationist Democrat in the state legislature. And there's an article from, I think it's from PIX. I think it's from PIX.com. I think it's channel 11 in Georgia. It deals with statewide election laws. Let me see if I can find that. So what happened was he pushed to have this law passed. And the reason why they passed this law in Georgia is if African Americans put all their votes behind one candidate and won the primary election, then they'd have to, then in the general election, the African American candidate would have to run against a white candidate. Like if white people split the vote in the primary, then in the general election, white people can put all their votes behind one white candidate and defeat the African American candidate in the general election. This is why that law was created. Okay, it goes back to 1963 in Denmark Groover. Let me see. Let me see if I can find this here. I think that's from PIX channel 11. Let me see. But so this deals with understanding history. And if our vote didn't matter, why do Republicans especially work so hard to suppress our vote? Let me see if I can find that. Well, I can't find it right now. I have to. Let me see something here. That'd be Denmark Groover. Okay, I have to find it, but search for research Denmark Groover in Georgia. And that was okay. I have to find it later. All right, but let's continue here. Okay, here's an article from NBCnews.com. It's not the one that I wanted, but there's one from PIX channel 11 that breaks this down. But this one right here puts you on the right path. This is from NBC News. Meet the Press blog. Let me see here. Okay, the law requiring a threshold, was signed in 1964, a year after being introduced by a Democratic state lawmaker named Denmark Groover from Macon, Georgia. Denmark Groover was a vocal segregationist, also known for his work to include the Confederate flag in a redesign of the state flag of Georgia in defiance of federal desegregation efforts. Okay. While several other states require candidates to receive, why the heck can we get rid of this? I don't need that. Just a second here. Okay, while several other states require candidates to receive 50% plus in many federal and state primary contests, Georgia is alone in requiring that share for both primaries and subsequent general elections. For both primaries and subsequent general elections. The law requiring the threshold was signed in 1964, a year after being introduced by Denmark Groover. Okay. Denmark Groover understood the electoral power of the black vote, having lost a race in 1958 when his strength with white voters was outmatched by the 80% of the black vote that went for his opponent. Okay, so here's what an Interior Department report on voting rights published in 2007 had to say about Denmark Groover's reaction to the loss. Quote, making Georgia, Politico blamed his loss, Denmark Groover blamed his loss on quote, Negro block voting, Denmark Groover soon devised a way to challenge growing black political strength in Georgia. Elected to the House, elected to the Georgia State House of Representatives, elected to the State House again in 1962, Denmark Groover led the fight to enact a majority vote runoff rule for all county and state contests in both primary and general elections. Denmark Groover was a Democrat. He was a segregationist Democrat of Georgia. Before a massive, this was before a massive political realignment in the South scrambled traditional racial political alliances. We talk about this in the class, the why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. It goes back to 1928 and the Lily White movement in 1928. It didn't start in the 1960s. It completed in the late 1960s. But by 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Democratic Party. We didn't switch over because of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and Voting Rights Act of 65. The tide started turning in 1928 when Republicans ran Herbert Hoover for president, and Herbert Hoover and they appealed to Southern segregationist Democrats in 5 former Confederate states to get those segregationist Democrats to vote for Herbert Hoover for president. Okay, it goes back to that, and Republicans were starting to ignore the rise of the Ku Klux Klan that became very powerful again in the 1920s. They were ignoring African American issues, and they were pushing us out of the Republican Party. We didn't switch because of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and 65. That's towards the end of that 40-year realignment. And it's really going to be complete after the 64 presidential election, where President Johnson runs against Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater was a segregationist senator from Arizona who was anti-civil rights. And Barry Goldwater only wins 6 states. And President Johnson overwhelmingly wins the African-American vote. Okay. That's towards the end of the party realignment. That's not at the beginning of the party realignment. This is why you have to understand history and law. Okay. All right. So now Denmark Groover, okay. Now with black voters firmly in the Democratic coalition, the 50% plus one rule, 50% plus. So like 51%, 50.1%, 50% of votes plus one. The 50% plus one rule has largely been a stumbling block for the party. Okay, read the rest of this here. This is from, saying the exact article I wanted, but it has some additional information in it. Meet the Press blog, latest news analysis and data driving the political discussion. Okay, and this deals with, this is from March 28th, 2019, and it was updated February. Well, it's a blog, so they have updated new articles. But this gives you some information about Denmark Groover. You can go research that also. Okay, you can go research that some more as well. All right, but this is just some of the things we deal with in the online class. And we go through, look at history, we look at articles, book references, video clips. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have all this. So we deal with the Civil War, Reconstruction, 40 Acres and a Mule, Special Field Order number 15, Juneteenth, and deal with the real history of Juneteenth, General Order number 3, and the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. It's the 13th Amendment, ratified December 6, 1865. We look at the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments. We talk about people like Sarah Rector, who was the richest Afro-American girl in the early 1900s, and she and her family got land because of Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866 and the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887. We look at the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, the Freedmen's Bureau, in the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands, the Freedmen's Bank, which collapses in 1874. Okay, and we lose about $2.9 million worth of our deposits. We look at massacres like the Vicksburg Massacre of 1874, and we start seeing the reversal of our rights. We see it was starting with the Tennessee State Legislature, 1881, writing segregation laws on public transportation. Okay, we see this in Tennessee, 1881, Florida, 1887, Mississippi, 1888, Texas, 1889, Louisiana, 1890. All right, etc. We look at the state constitutions as well, and the rewriting of the state constitutions, like the Mississippi State Constitution in 1890, that was rewritten to impose poll taxes and literacy tests. Okay, so we go throughout history and we look at all this. We look at people like Ida B. Wells, and we deal with World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, Great Migration, etc. All right, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended. How do we get to where we are today so we understand where we need to go from here? So I teach this class on Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can join us in class today because I'm about to get started. The class is on sale, $80, regularly $130. We have the link here in the thread of the broadcast, and then the description here. You can register for it. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information there as well. Just scroll down the page and you'll see it. Teach this class 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. And then also we have a bundle pack. The class I teach on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We have a bundle pack where you can register for both classes for only $120. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. So a year from now, if you want to go back and watch the entire class, you can do that. All right. If you've taken any of my classes before, online classes that I teach, I've been teaching them since 2017. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power is a newer class. I just started teaching that in 2021. But if you've taken any of the classes that I've taught before, email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. Email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. You get a 50% discount on the classes. All right. Then all of my DVD lectures, digital downloads, you have our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. Okay. So hopefully you've learned something today. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. Give us a thumbs up if you like this broadcast. Follow me on YouTube, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube. All right, remember, right now is correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.